Hi there, I'm Steve McLaughlin. Nice to meet you. I'm coming to you from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States of America. I'm on the campus of the University of Pennsylvania, where I happen to work. Um, so, if you've been watching videos from other people today, I suspect I may repeat things that other people have said. Nonetheless, that's just the risk of this kind of form. I will try to tell you a little bit about my involvement in poetry culture from my particular perspective. So first, I make a living, sort of, or mostly make a living from poetry stuff. I work with sound primarily at Penn. I work for the Penn Sound Poetry Archive, writing.upenn.edu/PennSound, which is a huge collection of tons and tons of thousands of MP3s, tens of thousands of poets reading their own work. And I run Penn Sound Radio, which is our 24-hour online poetry radio station, readings and conversations from the archive. I'm also an editor on jacket2.org, which is a literary magazine published by the Kelly Writers House here at Penn, but obviously has roots in Australia with John Tranter. I run the podcasts page, jacket2.org/podcasts, and I'm a senior editor over at UbuWeb, ubu.com, which is a big archive, just a vast archive of avant-garde film, audio, text, everything. It's something else. I've uploaded hundreds of videos for them. And I also, at the moment, run a reading series here in Philadelphia, the Principal Hand Presents Reading Series, which is once a month at a bar called L'Etage in downtown Philly. Pretty straightforward thing. I host 3 people per reading. I've been doing it for the last year and a half. So we did our 18th installment just last week. And in fact, Astrid Lorange read for the series in December of 2011. And so that's been really great. It's been an excellent way to meet people, and for that matter, to introduce people from differing backgrounds, sort of cross social connections, and it's been super satisfying. So that means 45 or 50 individual people I've come to the stage, I've introduced them, and it's really great. I publish a broadside series along with that through the Principal Hand Editions imprint, which is just my own, made-up, self-published imprint. I publish my broadsides at the FedEx Copy Center very cheaply in black and white. But that's what poetry culture is, really. I think that was my original attraction to a large degree. Poetry is so lo-fi. I mean, it's so it's really basic information. Audio recordings are one thing, but text is easily transmissible, and it's an old technology, and that's it. That's what poetry is made of to a large degree. And poetry is just made of these gatherings of readings that happen to be put together by one person or another. I was in a band in high school, and so I was really familiar with, we would talk the owner of a coffee shop into letting us set up our amps and bring in a bunch of 16-year-olds just through flyering or whatever through the internet, and we'd have a show, or we'd rent out a VFW hall. That's Veterans of Foreign Wars, like a fraternal organization, or the Disabled American Veterans. That we had a hall that we would use over and over again. So we played like 50 shows just in South Jersey, as teenagers, put together by teenagers, basically. And so when I got to college and I started getting into poetry culture intellectually, and started crossing over into the social world of poetry and seeing the way that poetry social networks work and the way that the kind of professional relationships exist out there, I saw more or less the same thing. What do you need to do to have a punk show or a poetry reading? It's very simple. You just talk to the person who runs the bar or whatever space, and you print up flyers, or you send out emails. It's really no more complicated than that. You don't have to have a PhD in comparative literature to do that. And for that matter, I have a lot of friends who are in graduate programs for literature or whatever, or MFA programs, poetry MFA programs. That's not so much my interest. It doesn't totally seem necessary. I don't mean to make light of the accomplishments of my colleagues who have gone that route, but it's not particularly my interest. I've spent a lot more time thinking about the social side of things and just writing emails and creating connections and just engaging in the active work of poetry, which is I'm not alone. That's not a really novel thing. Most people just come to poetry. They didn't start studying when they were in their teens or take poetry lessons when they were younger or whatever. People who are deep into literary culture can be often a little bit intimidating because it has its own language and it takes time to learn that. But if you're interested in engaging in this stuff, there's no one keeping you from doing so. There are no gatekeepers because there are gatekeepers, but there are no real gatekeepers because there's no money to be made. It's like a mass hobby, which just manifests itself in the form of a huge international network of friends sending each other PDFs and emails, and occasionally someone will publish a book that gets bought enough times that it makes money, but that's a total rarity. That's totally not, as far as I'm concerned, what the poetry world is about, or at least that's not what I like about it. So yeah, I would encourage you to not worry about anyone publishing your own work. Just publish yourself and publish your friends too. It'll make them feel great. Yep, you can find my work at StephenMcLaughlin.net, or you can find links to my Twitter and so on. Anyway, it's a pretty bare-bones site. That's Stephen with a PH, StephenMcLaughlin.net. And yeah, check out Jacket 2 and Pen Sound if you haven't already. And oh yeah, I'll just in closing note that poetry and literary culture in general, but poetry in particular, is an ever renewing field, ever a frontier field. If you think about the way people talk about geology or computational linguistics as frontier fields, or the physics of dark matter as a frontier field, the field is changing now. It will look different in 20 years than it does now. Well, that's poetry always and forever. Culture at large is constantly renewing itself. Our social conditions individually are constantly changing, and we're always negotiating these things. And poetry is an expression of some of that, and a particular kind of expression manifested in a particular culture, but that's what it is. I think it's an endless frontier, and there's no sight of the end of it. So yeah, I'm Steve McLaughlin, and thanks for your time. I hope you're having fun down there. Hey, Astrid.